Morning, morning, everybody, on this December 17th, 2025. That's winding down. 2025 is winding down, and I've been reflective. I've been reflective for possibly a decade, actually, when I kind of bring things together, but being reflective of what it means to develop and evolve your consciousness and the journey that I've been on. It really started to open up for me in 2008. 2008 was the breakthrough. You remember I talked about that a lot in my videos about you're going to go through trials and errors. You're supposed to. And then you're going to get to a point of a breakthrough. And once you get through that breakthrough, you're going to be in another level of trials and errors, breakthrough, trials and errors, breakthrough. So it's a constant evolving. Instead of just spinning in one place, you're doing it in a almost like a horizontal vertical climb when you develop yourself. Those are the level, and keep in mind, we only have 1 billion+ years more to do this. So in other words, it's a process, and it doesn't stop. You stop it. You stop the growth. You stop the development. So I've been talking about deconstruction or reconstruction, actually. For some people they're deconstructing, and for others they're reconstructing. It's a similar path. And what I am doing is just offering some guidance and documenting. I'm documenting for a reason. And there we go. Let's see. I'm documenting for a reason, just so it'll coincide with what I'm doing with my projects. In other words, I'm creating, some documents and creating some documentations of what I am doing, so that there will be the back end of everything. Talking to you on these videos, and working on my project online, and then eventually doing things in public and blah blah blah. It's all going to work out in the proper fashion. I know there's a bottleneck there. That's because, like I said, everybody wants to speak, everybody wants to be heard, everybody wants to scale. Everybody wants to do this. Everybody, it's that heaviness that we're all carrying, that bottleneck. And what's swirling around in there is criminal negative energy. So we're going to have to get in there as we are deconstructing or reconstructing, and neutralize all of this criminal negative energy that's encasing our planet. Literally, figuratively, and metaphorically. And if the physics out there would snap out of it and understand what we are dealing with right now, they may start panicking, actually, because they know where we are. They'll understand where we're headed, and it's not not in the best. Let's put it this way: we don't have the best path that we're heading in as a collective on this planet. Okay, we're headed towards disaster. If some don't wake up and snap out of it, and sadly, with the planet of almost 10 billion people, it is highly unlikely that that some will snap out of it in time to make a difference or make an impact. So deconstruction should be evident, and then if you're reconstructing, you're rebuilding, repairing, restoring, and that's what it means. In a metaphor for the evolution of the consciousness, you're deconstructing, and then you're going to turn around and reconstruct it. And I'm telling you, it's a daunting process. It's not easy, because a lot of it should have been taking place in your adolescence. When you were in your adolescence, you didn't have all these responsibilities, such as providing for yourself. In most cases, your parents did. Providing for yourself, making sure that you are taken care of and you have the basic needs, shelter, clothing, food, blah, 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 transportation, blah, blah, blah. So as I'm talking about these stages of when you deconstruct, you're going to eventually reconstruct. But as you're deconstructing, you have to be very, very aware and conscious, so that you are not just going from one place to a similar place. And that's what they do on the on these algorithms. If you paying attention, they keep stacking us all together. And they think making up, they're forcing us to be of similar mindsets, and not allowing people to make that decision on their own. When you decide to deconstruct, that has to be your decision. You're not doing it because it's trending or because everybody else is doing it. I want to jump on the bandwagon. No, stand by. Ooh, sometimes I don't like that ceiling fan. It be blowing on me. Ooh, makes me, it just bothers me. So so as I've said in the previous videos and the other thousands of videos I have out there, everything is of similar free will. It's still free will what you do, whether you deconstruct, reconstruct. That's all has to be free will. Again, you don't want to do it because you see everybody else doing it, and so that means I need to let's leave that there. So that means that, well, everybody else is doing it, and a lot of people do jump on the bandwagon, but usually people fall off the bandwagon. They're so excited, which you ought to be excited, but you have to kind of manage that. They're excited that they've snapped out of it. They think they've discovered, they think they've reinvented the wheel, and you possibly did, but how can you keep it? What are you replacing it with? So I've noticed it again all over the social media platform. Did I give the date? December 17th, 2025? I think I did. But as I'm paying attention all throughout the social media platform, and in my physical environment, my physical environment, I'm kind of paying attention to what people were doing a year ago versus 2 years ago when I first moved over here. And there's a change. I can sense a change. And what that usually does, what that usually relates to, is people are moving. I told you there's going to be an exodus where people are moving from here to there and everywhere. And in this environment, that happens quite often, because a lot of these apartments are month to month, which I think that's better than signing a lease, in my opinion. But that all of that is fraud anyway. The leasing of apartments and these Airbnbs or whatever they're calling it. A lot of fraud is, financial fraud is involved with that. So you just have to, you have to protect yourself the best way you can. So I think month to month is possibly the best circumstances for a lot of people, so that you can kind of think forward. Okay, what am I going to do? Because I knew this was going to be a temporary situation. I didn't know how temporary, so that's why I'm kind of glad that it works out for me. That it works out for me, and that's what you have to look at, the big picture. Everything's over here. I mean, I can walk to a grocery store. There's hospitals everywhere, which is kind of ironic. So it's a busy. There's a school over here. There's kids, not as many animals, but definitely a lot of kids, a lot of young people, a lot of all walks of life, all nationalities, all colors are over here, and it's a busy area. It's quite. Even though it's quiet now, it's quiet now. But when I first moved over here, I was not accustomed to the amount of noise that come through these single pane windows. When I had my home on the other side of town, or on the other side of the world, I should say. It was required because it was a hurricane state that you had a particular type of window where you can barely hear what was going on. But even though when I was there, I still, you still want to know what's going on outside. You don't want to completely block out the noise and sounds and tones of what's going on in your neighborhood. Somebody could be yelling fire, fire, fire. And if you can't hear that, even though we do have smoke detectors, so I understand the rationality around a lot of things, but a lot of it is illogical, redundancy. A lot of it is wasteful, and a lot of it is it's a lot of health hazards, in certain areas because of the amount of traffic. The traffic is what's causing the health hazards and such. So my point is, when you start deconstructing and you get that false reality of religion and your concepts of it, you kind of suspend that, and eventually it'll neutralize itself. Don't just say, okay, just suspend it, okay, and take it step by step. Stop going to this place that represents religion, but don't immediately go somewhere else. Just suspend going. Stop going for a minute, or where, like church or some type of Bible study, all that. Just suspend it and allow other ideas to kind of filter in, enter into you, to whereas you start saying, wait a second here, why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? Ask the questions: who, what, when, where, why, what if, how. Answer those questions. Be kind and gentle with yourself. A lot of people are going to have a revelation unlike anything. They're going to be so despondent because of what they've allowed themselves to go unconsciously doing for decades, and mainly in their thoughts. They believe their thoughts without examining their thoughts. Your thoughts can lie to you. Did you know that? All because you say, I'm a boy. Are you a boy? I'm a girl. Am I a girl? Those things have to be examined properly, completely, and not just say, well, those are the thoughts in my head. Well, re-examine those thoughts. A lot of people, their thoughts are delusional and hallucinating. They're hallucinating, they're delusional, they're on that verge of schizophrenic, self-created man-made dementia, self-created man-made black holes in your consciousness, where, you just kind of, going along with the program and not questioning the program. We are being impulsed with energy because we're energy. And that energy is criminal negative energy as well as positive, neutral positive energy. You have to discern it and see if it's logical, rational, and reasonable. Okay, does the math add up? As the people like to say, is the mathing? Does it make sense? Okay, because it's really simple. There's really simple concepts to being a genuine human being in the true sense. There's not all this rumination about it. You don't sit and ruminate over, okay, do I want my coffee with sugar or cream? Do you sit there, and a lot of people do that literally, figuratively and metaphorically, sit there and ruminate over whether I should add another, add some more sugar to my coffee, or, what should I wear? How should I wear my hair? A lot of people spend the majority of their time on just that, not recognizing, because even if this planet is being destroyed due to human behaviors and actions, you still have to evolve your consciousness. So that means if we do destroy yet another planet, which we are headed towards 6 times, is what we're being told. That's where we're headed. We're headed to destroying this planet. You still have to evolve your consciousness. So what does that mean? There's going to be a spiritual component to you that is going to search the world over for other places to go for you for you to evolve your consciousness. Energy is all energy. And you can be wandering, quote unquote, literally, figuratively, metaphorically, for millions of years. But then at some point, there's going to be a it's gonna all combust and contract, and then you're going to spin yourself into another self-created man-made black hole, and that's literally as well as figuratively and metaphorically. But so that's all I'll say today on this deconstruction, reconstruction process a lot of people are going through. I think it's a beautiful thing, especially for the development of your consciousness. It can help you to snap out of some of these realities a lot of people are living, spending money on cosmetic procedures because they don't understand what's going on inside. And so they're just interfering somewhat in their development of their consciousness. They figure, okay, if I say I'm something, then that means I am. Well, is that true? And when you think about it when you were a young child. You said a lot of things. And that's that development phase. I told you that's so extremely important. You said a lot of things. But how much of that is true now as an adult? I would say, let's say 80%, maybe 90% of it has, kind of developed itself into something else that's more logical, rational, and reasonable. And it makes sense. It's not complicated. You're not ruminating over it. Okay? So the reconstruction, deconstructing, whatever the process you're in, be kind and gentle with yourself. You don't have to share so much of it online because you're gonna get pumped. People are brutal, literally, figuratively, and metaphorically, and violent. Okay, a lot of people are taking their violence. They weren't satisfied with what was happening online, how they were brutalizing people and targeting people and harassing people. So a lot of them are taking it offline and and then attempting to take out innocent people, because of their delusion and hallucination about who they think they are, what they think they are, and why they think they are. And as I said about people that go into cults, the 90% of the people, maybe 95% of the people in cults, CULTs, end up either harming themselves, but in most cases they harm themselves and then they harm others, whether that's literally, figuratively, metaphorically, materialistically, financially. So just guard yourself, protect yourself, stay grounded, stay in a genuine, bona fide reality. Reach out to people that are non-biased, non-religious, or whoever, or they can suspend that and open up what's going on inside of you and help you deal with it. A psychologist, psychiatrist, they're not going to do this for you. You have to do this all for yourself. So, and then I'm going to have some activities online as well that will help you along the way as well. So I'm going to go ahead and stop right now. Remember, universal love was always inclusive. We divided it and turned it into a commodity. Peace and love, and trust me, I will be back.